organization was highly inefficient. You should create an impression that your manager believes, if I assign this task to this guy, the task is done.
What could be your message to those CEOs who are already CEOs?
You must build a very, very strong, cohesive team. My plan was to take the bank into the stock market.
Have you fired someone in your career as a CEO?
Of course, it's inevitable.
You fired people?
Yeah, I have fired people.
The Ntangeki Nshala show is a business show where I hold conversations with business leaders. From time to time, I invite successful business leaders or influential policymakers to sit with me and share the information, insights, and opinion on current matters and how they see the future. This is a show that's aimed to enlighten our viewers and offer them information and insights that they can use in their own lives as business leaders and personal lives to improve their productivity and effectiveness on how they run their lives and their businesses. Welcome to the Ntangeki Nshala show. And today we have a pleasure of hosting one of the most reputable bankers in Tanzania. He started his career with TCB Bank in Tanzania. He went to Standard Chartered Bank in Tanzania. Then to Bahrain, was at the regional office. Then back to Tanzania, to the Tanzania Postal Bank, very small, unknown bank. And he was able to transform the bank into one of the giants, very reputable, very prosperous banks in Tanzania. This is none other than our good friend, Sabasaba Moshingi. Sabasaba Moshingi, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Ntangeki Nshala. Thank you.
You have been one of the bankers in Tanzania, very reputable, and you were able to transform Tanzania Postal Bank then, and now TCB Bank. Tell me about this journey. How did you move from Bahrain, where you were, and what made you come to Tanzania and head this very small, very much unknown, probably forgotten government institution?
Thank you very much, Ntangeki, for giving me the opportunity to talk to you and your leaders about my career journey, how I was able to transform the then highly inefficient Tanzania Postal Bank into one of the leading banks in Tanzania, and probably what could be some of the learning points in my career progression, and probably what can I share to the youth that are also aspiring to become successful bankers. I hope there will be something to be learned from this discussion.
Sure.
I actually started my banking career with the Standard Chartered Bank.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
My first employer who made me a banker was actually Standard Chartered Bank. But then I moved to another bank, Stanbic Bank, then KCB, and then I rejoined Standard Chartered Bank. And then the story of moving out of Tanzania happened to where I came back to Tanzania to transform TCB Bank to where it is today. And obviously, as you are aware, have also moved from TCB some few months back, actually 3 months ago, and now having another task of transforming DCB Commercial Bank PLC. To answer your question, I started my career about 30 years ago, and before I became a banker, I was actually working as a teacher in one of the schools in the Lake Zone region. I was teaching mathematics, economics, and geography, but I wasn't actually a trained teacher. At that time, I was still waiting to join the University of Dar es Salaam, where I had been admitted to do a Bachelor of Commerce at the then Faculty of Commerce at the University of Dar es Salaam. And at that time, there was a 1 year slack period after finishing the national service, where you would wait to join the university. When I was doing that teaching job, the liberalization of the financial sector happened, and foreign banks came into Tanzania. And I was lucky to apply and secure a job within a Standard Chartered Bank. So I started my career then as a bank clerk, fairly a junior officer, the lowest level of any classified banker. And I was able to raise through the ranks, getting promotion after promotion. And actually, by the time I reached 29 years of age, I'd already become a head of a department. Now at another bank called KCB. I think that's why you were able to pick it.
Yes.
Then I rejoined the Standard Chartered Bank, where I spent a couple of years in Tanzania, where I worked in corporate banking. Then I became head of technology and operations. And because of my performance, I was moved out of Tanzania to Middle East, where I worked in Bahrain, as you put it correctly, as regional head of operational risk and sales governance for retail banking for Jordan, Qatar, Oman, Bahrain, and Qatar. And I was actually based in Bahrain, where I spent about 4.5 years before coming back to Tanzania to take over the reign of TCB, at that time called Tanzania Postal Bank, a government-owned bank, highly inefficient bank. And the rest is history. And given time, I will be able to share now how we went about changing TCB from a struggling bank, highly inefficient. You used the word forgotten. Yes, absolutely
Yes.
forgotten bank, because there were a couple of experiences after my appointment where I would introduce myself and somebody would say, I think that bank has already closed down.
Yes.
So obviously the story of forgotten, yes, but still we believed in ourselves.
But then when you were in Bahrain
Yes,
and you came to TCB, to Postal Bank then,
yes,
how did you come? Because you're very far,
yes,
and this is a very small bank, and
Yes.
you're already in a multinational bank. Probably your career trajectory was already leading you somewhere else.
yes.
Why did you make that turn and come back to?
Yeah,
Very small bank.
very valid point. And actually, a lot of people have been asking this question to me. Here is the story. One, I first wanted to have an international exposure in my career. So Standard Chartered Bank was indeed the right organization that could provide that opportunity. And the way they used to manage talent there, they will push you to death. They will grill you to death. They will demand results from you to the extent that if you are able to survive, it means you are a great guy. Then after you reach a certain level, there will be opportunities flaunted around the globe for those who qualify to try to apply. In my case, actually, the job was advertised. I applied. I was able to compete with many people from Indians, Chinese, Europeans, and other fellow Africans, and still I was able to secure a job. So I went there and I was enjoying my job, fairly well-paying job, demanding, but I was still fairly very young and I'm a hardworking fellow. So demanding a job wasn't a problem to me. And surely I was enjoying my job. I never thought, even once in my career, I would be working for a government organization or even a government bank for that matter. But it happened that the government of the then President Kikwete was looking for people from the private sector and preferably people from the diaspora to come and transform ailing, struggling public organizations. I think that is where the story started. So the earmarking, I don't know who did it, but then I received a call that I should submit my CV. There is a position which was vacant of the CEO of Tanzania Postal Bank. And you know what my quickest answer? I'm not interested. I'm not sending my CV. But then after some time, I realized I needed to come back to Tanzania because my expatriate career that I had, I was very clear. In 5 years' time, I would consider going back to Tanzania. And actually, I was coming to my 5th year. And the bank had started thinking of where to move me. And there was option of going to London, which I didn't like because I had already spent some time there when they were actually preparing me to become the head of the department. And life was tough there, and so I wasn't keen. And there's some other options, either to Singapore or some other parts of the group. But the only available job which was available to bring me back to Tanzania became joining Tanzania Postal Bank. So that is how later on I said, you know what, let me go and do my best and see how I can survive there. And surely my focus was to come, transform the organization, and in the next 5 years, I move out of the government to join the private sector again. And I spent 12 years, and still, even where I am, I'm still in public, and I am fine with it. So that
Okay.
is how the story of me
So
joining TCB.
it's a fantastic story. And it's a
Yes.
fantastic journey how you were able to go there and come back and probably bring the experience.
Yes.
But now I'm curious.
Yes.
How did you now manage to transform your own ways of working
Yes.
from a purely global private bank
Yes.
to a purely local, small public institution?
Yes.
So the clash of cultures and the transformation, how did you manage to transform yourself
Yes.
and then again later transform the bank?
Surely, this is a very, very valid point. And actually, the way I am very focused individual, result-driven person, and somebody who doesn't accept mediocre and procrastination, things not happening. And unfortunately, in the government cycles, the way things are done is slow. And obviously, I needed to transform myself, but not to transform myself to the extent that I forget myself in terms of who I am in getting results. And I navigated this. Let me share with you some experiences. One, in the private sector and in the corporate world where I had grown and spent a couple of years and became acquainted with, if the time of the meeting is 10 o'clock, exactly 5 minutes before 10, everybody would be seated, very well prepared, and the meetings would be spot on. You finish the meeting, off you go. In the government cycle, that's not the case. It is common in somebody in the government taking another 2 or 3 hours while you guys are seated. The way the boards used to be run in the corporate world where I was, spot on time, everybody's aware of the issues that are being discussed, decision making is quick, and the focus is actually on issues. Unfortunately, in the public sector, there is the bowing down, everybody taking sweet time, issues being discussed quite long. And that kind of culture of respect, the way you talk, was indeed a big challenge at the beginning. Luckily for me, the chairman of the board, who is actually my neighbor and my former lecturer at the University of Dar es Salaam, Professor Utashobia, was also a result-oriented person. And she was able to help me navigate. Otherwise, there are times when you go into a meeting and during the discussion, you find yourself clashing with some of the board members because you have used the statements that they are not used to. For example, I remember a time when I said, I don't care about the experience of a person. If I see somebody who has what I'm looking for, I'll promote him. Whoever was actually challenging that decision felt offended. So I had to apologize so that the meeting could progress. And then I knew how to correct my statement. So that is at least from my own person in terms of how I cope. But then on my employees, I had to drill their heads, their thinking to change because I didn't want to become also like them. If I did that, we wouldn't have transformed the organization. And let me share with you one example. We had one head who did not want to talk to any employee except heads of the department. And yes, he was a seriously big-headed person. And at head office, who is your customer?
It is your people.
Yes,
people
your
under
people.
you.
Actually, in principle, your staff. So if you can't support them, if they can't come to you, how do you link together and deliver results? And this was a very, very important stakeholder. So I had to go and tell them, guys, we have to change. And you have two options, change or quit. And in the government cycles, those stories of I'll fire you are not widely spoken and not acceptable. But I had to use those words. And again, for me, I'm also a leader who also believes in giving everybody opportunity to prove themselves, opportunity to agree into what I want to deliver so that we work together and move forward together. So I gave them that opportunity. The majority actually, after realizing I know what I want to achieve and I cannot be swayed by their line of thinking or gray hair that they had. I was still a very young guy at that time, in my late 30s. Actually, I was appointed when I was around the early 40s. So actually, I was 40. And predominantly the heads that I found there were in early 50s and mid 50s. So I was a small guy. I had to change the culture of, greeting each other, shikamoo. So it took time, but I tell you, finally,
Oh, yeah.
we spoke the same language. And also, finally, I think my seniors or my peers or the government understood what I was trying to achieve, that I'm not arrogant. This is who I am. And actually, as you may be aware, I come from Soma. For us, black is black, white is white. And on the process, we're able to move. Actually, I wasn't sure if I will be able to survive for that long. But I stayed there for 12 years and 4 months. And I'm grateful to God. So I was able to change my culture, but still with the focus of changing the organization and transforming the organization that I was managing.
Now, Mr. Moshingi, that was a culture part of it. You are able to transform the culture. Now, how did it result in terms of numbers and probably branch growth? Did you manage to get the results?
Before giving the story about what we did, let me give you a context of how the organization was when I joined the bank. Few issues. One, cost-income ratio was around 96%. The implication is every 100 shillings that is made, 96 is spent. So that tells you the organization was highly inefficient. The staff morale was indeed very, very, very poor. Work ethics and culture of employee was typical public sector. Salaries of employees were very, very off the market. They were in banking, but surely their salaries were very, very low. In fact, the salaries of directors were less than the salaries of branch managers of other banks. The branches were looking horrible and dilapidated. And obviously, it was very common to find no ACs working, chairs are broken, staff not having computers. So that was the organization that I inherited. There was no innovation. Everybody was happy with the very limited products that we had. Actually, nobody really considered it as a serious competitor and as a serious banker. So that is, in a nutshell, the organization that I found. The balance sheet of the bank at that time was 121 billion, meaning the total assets of the bank. And the ranking of the bank in the banking sector, from the largest bank at that time, NMB, and the smallest bank, the bank was number 21. And in terms of profitability, the bank was making very little profit, 500. So the SACCOs were making more money than that bank. And it was one of the oldest banks in Tanzania. Now almost 99 years since it was established in 1925. So that was the then Tanzania Postal Bank, or TBB Bank. So things needed to change. And what we did, number one, was to develop a very bold, clear vision of making this bank one of the leading banks in our chosen markets and in what we want to achieve. And number two, I made sure I and my team, I shared the vision to my team, starting with the directors, obviously after the support of the board, and then cascading it to everybody in the bank. And I used to have meetings with almost everybody in the bank. I visited all the branches within the first 1 year, and I also had town hall meetings and meetings with almost every department. The objective here is for everybody to know what we want to achieve as an organization.
Okay.
After that, we came up with now very clear performance indicators for everybody within the bank. From myself, and I committed very bold performance targets within the first 1 year. And this was also passed on to everybody in the bank. And luckily at that time, I was allowed to introduce bonus scheme. It was a fairly very small amount of money. And also, we were also able to create an environment that we will actually support and recognize performers, reward them and promote them, and also, if possible, promote from within. What we also did, after spending some time looking at my senior management team, we had to change some of them that we couldn't see that they are also thinking like us, or they could also go with our speed. But they're actually the minority, because I brought on board a new head of marketing, head of technology and operations, and I also brought on board somebody to manage treasury. And the rest actually, especially the business guys and whatever, were the same people. I saw they could change. And the bank at that time, I said, had a balance sheet of 121 billion. the total shareholders' funds, the capital of the bank was around 8 billion. 8 billion.
8 billion.
And after bringing on board those few things here and there, a few guys here and there demanding a result, the first 6 months that I had joined the bank, we were able to improve the profits of the bank from around 900 million the previous year to 3.8 billion.
Wow.
And specifically at that time, we really improved the top line, the revenue side, and we cut costs aggressively, while now enforcing the right culture. The subsequent year is the year that we introduced the bonus, and also that was the year when the performance management also kicked in. And after the end of the first year, the profit of the bank improved from 3.8 to 5.6 billion.
Wow.
Okay. And we paid bonus. And I tell you, that was now the major departure point in terms of the organization. Because there are so many lazy people who were sick, but they were actually not sick, but they didn't want to work. Predominantly, most of them became cured. Because what happened, others got a letter which says, thank you for your contribution in the growth of this organization. Your rating is 85%. And here is your bonus, maybe 1 month salary, some 2 months salary. And the poor performers were poorly rated. They received a letter which says your performance was unacceptable and you are not living the values of our organization. You will have no bonus, no salary increase. And actually, you have now put on PIP for the next 3 months. And if you cannot improve, the bank will consider terminating the relationship with you. In a public organization, that was something which looked like unheard of. But the fact that others went with money and you went with nothing and zero salary increment, I tell you, it changed the organization. And then we were able also to build some innovation hubs within the bank. You know, we had a small team of young people, and we gave them the freedom to think about anything which they think is an opportunity in the market. And they came with so many ideas, and some were implemented, and it really changed the bank that you see. For example, the digital solutions that that bank did. I think you are aware of the Songesha.
Yes.
Songesha was actually a TCB product. I'm sure people knew it was a Vodacom product, but yes, the scoring, the logics behind was done by the team there. Now there is a very popular product called Mkoba, where people save in groups. And by the time I left the bank, I think the Mkoba had around 80 billion balances built.
80 billion?
80 billion, yes. And that was only the subscribers who are subscribing within the Vodacom network alone. So they had about 80 billion. And so many other products like informal group accounts and the like. They would come with a crazy idea. We look at it and we would support them even if it's crazy. We tell them, thank you very much. Think through about it again and again. And before you know it, TCB was the largest bank that when I left the bank, yes, the balance sheet was now 1.4 trillion.
But before going too far to there,
yes,
I want you to tell us,
yes,
while you were implementing all these changes,
yes,
how was the board coming along with you? Because I understand sometimes you might be having all these great ideas, but since if the board is not supporting it or is not seeing what you're saying, yes, sometimes you find the boards do not approve, and you know, without approval of the board, most of the decisions can't go.
Yes.
So did you find any board issues or frictions that slowed you down, or how did you navigate?
Obviously, as a CEO, you have to navigate the board dynamics, because obviously I was still a very young guy and highly ambitious, and my board was fairly made up of mature people, and those who are also not used to those serious pressures and whatever. But luckily, the board really supported me, especially the chairperson of the board. If I didn't have her as the board chairperson, probably I may not have really succeeded, because the issue of, say, bonus is something which is unheard of in the government cycles. Also, the issue of telling people I'll fire you, these are also issues that are also unheard of in the public sector. But surely the board was indeed very supportive. And maybe one more important aspect that I want to mention here. If the results are good,
yes,
okay, and this is the message I give to all CEOs. If you are able to deliver and exceed the expectation of the board and the shareholders, somehow they will give you the benefit of doubt. They will somehow have some concern about what you want to achieve, but most likely they will say, okay, try it. We are also ready to support you. But in simple terms, I was indeed very, very supported. There are times when we had some challenges and some disagreements, but by large, they really supported me.
Okay, now you are able to transform the bank. Now the bank is making money.
Yes.
It is 4 times more profitable than it was.
Yes.
And so all of a sudden, then we heard the government merging banks
Yes.
into TBB Bank,
Yes.
Post Bank. Share with us that experience, because that's a very unique experience.
Yes.
And I understand it's a complex one.
Yes.
So how did you navigate?
Yeah.
How were you able to put into all the 3 banks together with their cultures, their numbers, their customers, their products? How did you handle that?
Yeah. Thank you very much. The major story is indeed a very, very unique and an important experience in my career. But before responding to that, let me say something before I forget. When I joined the TPB Bank at the time, if I may use your analog of a car, it was a car which had flat tires. The engine was knocked down, and probably the chairs are broken, windscreen not there. And my initial plan was at least repair that car to be able to go into the road. Then make it also capable of now competing in a rally. And after that, my plan was to take the bank into the stock market, sell the shares, make the government the minority shareholder, and then build another equity bank or one of those large banks that you could think of. And I had already had a discussion with the President of Tanzania, Dr. Kikwete, and the ministry, and they were okay with that. Then in 2016-17, when we are now in that process, obviously there was already a change in government, and the decision was actually rescinded by the government later on, and then the story of the merger kicked in. What had happened? There were 3 government-owned banks. The first one was TBB Bank, which was previously National Bureau de Change, which was a unit within the then National Bank of Commerce. And when the divestiture of NBC happened, NMB was born and NBC, and the National Bureau de Change was left as a separate entity, which later changed its name to TBB Bank. Then there was another bank called Tanzania Women Bank, which was established by the government specifically to provide the banking services for women, which is predominantly savings as well as accessing credit facilities. And then there was another corporate bank, which was TIB, which was born out of the divestiture of, not divestiture per se, but TIB Development Bank split into 3 units. TIB Corporate, which was now a commercial wing capable of receiving deposits, and then there was Agriculture Bank, and there also the TIB Development. Now, these 3 banks, Twiga, Women Bank, and the TIB had their own challenges. And I could summarize the challenges that they had. One was efficiency. Predominantly, all of them were running at losses. Secondly, they had problem with the capital, because if you are running an organization and loss, chances are you will deplete the capital quickly. And then they had also predominantly also large non-performing assets because of whatever reasons, and they couldn't meet the regulatory requirement as per Bank of Tanzania. And the government had probably 3 options. Option 1, capitalize the bank and leave them to run the way they are, or sell them, we are not interested, or finding somewhere where they can be nested. And now the story of merger happened. So these banks had problems. They were all loss-making. And actually, during the mergers, TBB Bank was making a loss of about 5 to 6 billion annually. And they had a negative equity of around 21 billion during the merger. Women Bank was making losses of around 3 billion. then TIB was making losses of around 7 billion. So if you combine them together, you are talking of at least 16 billion losses that came. And the decision was made by the government, then the TPB at the time. Why? We had already built a very strong bank which had an average growth rate of 20 to 30% annually. And our projections actually, if it wasn't the measures, last year we would be making something like 50 billion profit before tax. And obviously by the time I left, we were making something like 20 billion year on year. But then the challenges were brought by the measures. Now, to answer your question, the challenges.
Yes.
If somebody tells you measures are easy, nice to have, that person must be probably a consultant like you, making money from consulting and advising. But measures are always tough, very tough, especially for the involved teams, the staff, management, and even the customers, the systems and everything is always tough and messy. That is what I could say. And actually, I was thinking of doing a PhD, but now I have a topic. If I combine transformation plus measures, I think I will have an appealing topic for my PhD paper.
Sure.
But even if I don't do that, I don't make it a PhD, but I think I would have to write something about it because it was one of the toughest experiences I had in my career and in my corporate leadership. What are the challenges of the measure? One is the culture, because these measures happened in the span of 3 years, from 2018 to 2020, or 18, 19, about 3 years. And 3 different organizations, no, actually now 4, because 3 organizations vis-a-vis the anchor organization. So the cultural challenge is always one of the biggest tasks that you need to manage. Number 2 is the strategic risk. These banks had their own strategies. Who were their clients? How were they focusing on them and how things were being done there? How do you merge these strategies together without leaving anyone outside? For example, in the case of, say, TPB, we are a retail banker. Of course, we had already grown. We are now somehow a universal bank. We are now saving even big people like Ntangeki Nshala, but we're also saving smaller guys because this was now our own fault. But then TIB came and they are serving predominantly huge corporate bodies. How do you merge the two and the teams and the systems and everything? Another challenge is the systems. You need within that period to merge 4 systems together. So first, choosing the right system and then going through that pain process of now actually making these systems speak the same language. And another biggest challenge that is part and parcel of merger is some jobs will be lost. And not necessarily jobs, but positions. Because here you are talking of 4 banks merging in a span of 3 years. And you have directors on each of these banks, including even CEOs, who should be given the position and who should not be given the position. And those that their positions falls off, they would feel, whoever was given the mandate to manage this process is not fair to us. And again, being a government organization, there was a lot of politics or challenges how the measures should be run. And we didn't even have a consultant. So everything, we did it on our own, developing a clear checklist of what needs to be done before the announcement of the measure, what kind of due diligence needs to be made, then combining the financials, the valuations, and the resourcing, the systems, configuration, and then moving forward as one organization, the branding, and basically also, if these institutions were not efficient and profitable, there are some issues. So those issues need to be sorted out. And in our case, actually, during the merger, all the assets and liabilities came, so including all the staff. When I was CEO of TPB, I had a fairly well-resourced head office. Now here I receive from Women Bank, I receive from Twiga Bank, and I receive from TIB Corporate. And so all these combined together gave me a very, very interesting lessons. But what I can say proudly, we were able to navigate all those challenges of, why don't you appoint this guy? But when I look at him, he's not as good as this one here. And I decide, I run this bank, these are my employees. I decide who should be here. Then you will receive these clients who wanted to borrow from us, you have rejected him. Because in the other organization, they were not risk conscious like the way I am. And I would say, this guy does not qualify to be my client. We navigated all of these challenges. And the bank was still profitable until when I retired. And we were able to bring everybody on board. It was tough, and some really rejected to be brought on board and juggled with them. Some were able to find jobs outside. And finally, that is where we are. TCB, I left it as a big bank with a balance sheet of 1.4 trillion shillings, now 82 branches. And in terms of the ranking, now bank number 9 from bank number 21, some 10, 12 years ago. And now a very stable bank, ready to move on. And I congratulate the guy who took over from me. I wish him well. He's inheriting a very strong bank. Just need to fix a few things here and there, and the rest will be history.
Wow, that's a fantastic career performance.
Yes.
And you have had all these challenges. Now you've moved the bank from 121 billion,
yes,
where you found it,
yes,
to
1.4 trillion shillings. Yes.
That's a wonderful,
yes,
wonderful performance.
Yes.
And that is within a span of how many
12
years?
years.
12 years. You've
Yes.
been able to transform this bank
yes,
from a small, unknown,
yes,
forgotten bank
yes,
into one of the major banks
yes,
in the financial sector in Tanzania.
Yes.
That is a great performance
yes,
by any scale.
Yes, absolutely.
So now you've moved on.
Yes.
Before I go into that area,
yes,
if you were to advise a person who aspires to become a CEO,
yes,
what do you think they should do?
Yes.
So that they can become as successful as you've been?
Yes.
Or even better?
Let me respond it in this way. When I started my career as a bank clerk, I think what did I do that made me somebody to be spotted for promotion or to be given more responsibilities, to be considered to be moved out of the country to where I am today, to when I became a CEO. Number one, I loved my job and I was committed to it. And I believed this is the best job that I have. And when my fellow colleagues would be complaining about poor pay or senior guys getting better bonuses than us, going for maybe 2 years without salary increment, my message has always been, why don't you work hard to become one of them? And I never, ever went to tell my boss, I'm not well paid. I want you to look at my welfare here and there. Why? I know if I go with some negativity, then I would be actually pointing a picture that I'm not happy with what I am doing. And actually, I loved my job, number one. Number two, when I'm given an assignment, I made sure I understood what is expected of me, and I would do it to the best of my capability. I would do it to the best of my capability. Number three, I believed in producing tangible results. I believed in producing tangible results. So whatever I'm doing, I should be able to have something to go and show. I have produced this. Another aspect which was also necessary and I wanted to share with you, if there is a group assignment or something to be done by a team, I would volunteer to be the leader. It's an opportunity when a CEO has come and you are a bank clerk. How will he know you are there? If there is a vote of thanks to be made, I would volunteer to make that vote of thanks. But obviously, your numbers, your work should be able to carry you. So that is what helped me. And because of that, I was promoted when I was still very young in my career. And actually, my first promotion, I was the youngest among the team in terms of age and experience. But I was actually the one who was picked. And the rest is history. Another aspect, if there is an opportunity which has been advertised, if you think you have what it takes, put your name in, go and build your case. Because sometimes nobody may see what you are doing, and actually you are still capable of doing that. So that was in my early days. It had helped me. In fact, most of the promotions that I had during my early days in my career, and when I even became middle manager, I never applied for any of jobs. They will just say, this is the right candidate, this is the right guy.
They come for you.
Yes, they will come for me because they know if I give this job to this guy, he'll do it. And as a leader, I would be a relaxed person. And this is the message I give to my young Tanzanians who are listening to you, that you should create an impression that your manager believes, if I assign this task to this guy, the task is done. It is in good hands. I can actually go home and sleep comfortably. And I remember there were times when my manager would be assigned a job by the head office. And I would tell him, don't worry, I will do it for you. Don't worry. And I'm a very busy person. Why? I volunteer to help my branch, to help my unit. So that in itself is indeed very, very important. As it had worked for me, I believe it could also work for other bankers. Now, becoming a CEO. Obviously, if you do what I said in terms of projecting yourself and being able to be trusted by everybody, chances are when there are opportunities, you may be considered. But most likely, CEO's position, they will be predominantly advertised because they may not be sure, whoever, the board or the owners may not be sure that we have the best candidate. If you think you have what it takes, put your name into the list, go and build a case. And what is most important during the interview, project the possibility that you will reform the organization from where it is to the next level, referring to your previous successes. If you have good successes, build your case. If you do that, chances are you will beat even the most experienced competitors. But obviously, once you are given a job, whether it's on trial, now the headache is yours to deliver. So I think
I think yes,
I've made a case.
I believe people who are watching this show, especially those young bankers who are aspiring to grow in their career and become probably one day become CEOs, they must have picked a few things that they can learn. Correct. But let me go back to the CEOs themselves. Now you are an experienced CEO, one of the most reputable CEOs in Tanzania, and you have, like you've said, you have a lot of results to show for that.
Correct.
Tell me, what is your message to CEOs? Because now I see in Tanzania, especially in the banking sector, we have a lot of young CEOs who are Tanzanians, they're local, but they're leading local banks and even big banks.
Correct.
But most of these people are young to you in seniority in terms of experience in the CEO.
And even age.
In the age and the experience. Even those who are leading big banks, they are younger than you and they haven't led for so long as you have done.
Correct.
What could be your message to those CEOs who are already CEOs? What should they do so that they become more successful as CEOs?
Correct. I will share my own experience, and I believe it will help especially young aspiring CEOs, even those who have been already CEOs. Number one, once you have been appointed, you must have a vision. You must have a vision of what you want to achieve. And that vision must be bold and very, very stretchy. That is number one. You must have a vision. So whether you are working for a multinational organization, if you are working for a multinational organization, the group may give you some challenges here and there. But your own vision is what will drive you to deliver whatever you want to. So that is number one. Number two, you must build a very, very strong, cohesive team that will help you to deliver the results. And for you to be able to build that team, one, you must constantly share with them your vision, and if possible, actually, build that vision together with them. Where we are, we may be doing well, but is that good enough? What can be done? What else can we do better? So you must, if possible, build that vision with them, assuming you go and you have been appointed in their teams or build a team. Share that vision and build it together with them. Number three, you must have strong people that can help you to execute, to get the results. Those good plans, they're as good as nothing if there are no people that can be able to deliver the results, meaning actually now going into the ground, getting the results. So if it's a bank, then going to look for clients, being quick in terms of appraisals, being quick in terms of approvals, and being quick and also able to monitor the clients, making clients happy, and also having strong systems that can be able to support them in terms of the core banking systems and the like. So execution is indeed key. And anybody working for you, whether it's a clerk, whether it's a messenger, whether it's a driver or a director or a head of a department or somewhere there, he must know the results. Performance is not optional. And they must be able, at the end of the year, show what they have contributed to the organization. That must be very, very clear to everybody. And I tell you, there are also lazy people. But when they know if we are lazy, we cannot survive here.
Yes.
Majority will actually change. And those that cannot cope, they will find ways to run away, to go and find a mediocre organization where they can survive with the mediocrity. And the last thing that I urge my young and aspiring CEO to consider, when you are given a task, and especially running a bank, being honest is indeed very, very key. And honesty here, I mean, you must treat your staff fairly. Any deal that comes in front of you, whether it's lending to a client or a contract that the bank is going to sign with a supplier, consider the organization first. Whatever I'm doing, is it for the best interest of the organization? And don't ever put your personal interest there. I tell these young people, and if you have been even hired as a bank CEO, you don't need to rush. There is no shortcut in life. And if you believe in doing the right things consistently, the result will speak for you. You will continue to perform, and the day you leave, you will be celebrated as a general.
Have you fired someone in your career as a CEO?
Of course, it's inevitable.
You fired people?
Yeah, I have fired people. And I feel bad about some of the decisions I made because, yes, when you fire somebody, he comes crying. It is painful. But being a manager, it has to be done. As a leader, taking tough decisions is part and parcel of leadership. And let me share with you some of the examples. When we were transforming TCB Bank, there were some bad behaviors that needed to be stopped. One, we had some guys asking for some bribe from borrowing clients. We needed to stop that behavior. So what do? Identify a few guys, fire them. Another experience, we had some people stealing from the bank. Okay? You are lucky you have secured a job as a banker in today's world, and yet you want to steal. I was very ruthless with the people who were stealing from the bank, and I fired a good number of them. As a leader, you must take bold decisions. And anybody who is a leader, if you can't make those decisions, your organization will fail because a performer and non-performer, a thief and a trustworthy individual will all be treated equal. So yes, firing is part and parcel of management, sir.
Thank you so much for that. Mr. Moshingi, you have covered quite a lot of management issues that you've experienced as an executive and as a CEO. Now, I also know you have served in board.
Yes.
As a board member. What lesson can you give to executives who go out to serve as board members, those who are appointed to serve different boards? What are your experiences and lessons that you wish other executives and other board members who are appointed into boards to learn so they can become effective board members?
Surely, as a CEO, I've served in so many boards. And my experience, having been in so many boards within Tanzania and even outside Tanzania, there is something that I think I can share with your audience. Number one, when you are appointed as a board member, create time. One, to understand the organization where you have been appointed as a board member. Also, create time to participate in the board meetings, read the papers that are submitted, and contribute positively for the best of the organization as a board member. If you are still unsure, please ask and speak out. Don't be scared of trying to share your experience and your views on issues that are presented before the board members. I have served in many boards. I'm currently chairman of a couple of boards. UBX Tanzania Limited is a technology company which is owned by some banks in Tanzania, Umoja Switch. I am also chairman of Tigo Pesa. I am also serving in so many other boards, but I want to share one experience about one board more specifically. TCB Bank was a member of World Savings and Retail Banks Association, which is headquartered in Brussels. And because of that, I became a board member representing African continent. We had about 5 board members representing African continent. And because of my participation and engagements, I was appointed the president of Africa Regional Group in 2015, and I served for 6 years. And when I finished my term as the president for Africa Regional Group, I was appointed to be the group vice president. There is a president who is like the chairman of the board, and he has 5 people who are closer to him. I became the group vice president, actually, when I was the chairman of African Regional Group, and when I left the chairmanship of the African Regional Group, because of my contribution, they made me to continue as a group vice president. And my tenure ended in 2021, some 2 years before I retired. And why did they give me all these opportunities to serve as a vice president, regional president for Africa Regional Group? Is because they saw my commitment and my contribution. Actually, there is a letter which the president has written to me. I received it some 3 days back. I'll give it to you. You can go and read it at your own. You know, they're asking me if I can make DCB a member so that I could join them and continue to contribute. So basically, what I'm saying, when you are given an appointment as a board member, give it the best of your time to contribute for that organization, and the rest will be history. Yes, sir.
Okay, so for any new board member, wherever they are,
Yes.
that means they need to really put their mind into the organization.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes you get a feeling that some board members get appointed, but I think their only focus is getting the fees, and that's it. They feel that the board is a place where you go rest, go relax, and earn your fees, and that's it.
Absolutely.
But I think it's a lot more work to become an effective board.
A lot, actually.
Yes, so you spend time.
Absolutely.
You spend a lot of time.
Yes.
Probably since I'm an author and I'm a person who's so passionate about reading.
Yes.
Let me ask you this question. When you are at that level as a CEO, did you find time to read? Are you a person who loves reading? How do you go with books? How do you relate?
I read books. I love reading books because if you don't read, you become obsolete. So I read books on management. I read your books a lot, actually. A couple of your books, The Novice and the Strategic Management. A couple of your books, I've read them. So I read also books on management. Some of the authors that I envy are people like Jack Welch. I think I have about 3 or 4 of his books. I've read books about transformation, the book by Richard Branson, the Toyota, the stories of Singapore from third world country to first. Books by some authors, biographies, the Mandelas, the Obamas, the Clintons, General Colin Powell. So yes, I read books.
You read?
I read books, yes.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
That's fantastic. So you still get time out of a busy schedule as a CEO to still read and improve your knowledge.
Yes, especially when I'm on travels.
The airport or somewhere.
The airport.
Or in hotels.
In the hotels. Because surely the normal working hours as a banker, there is a lot to be done. There is a lot to be read, which is not really like what you could read in books. But yes, I create time to read the book when there is an opportunity to do so.
Okay, so Mr. Moshingi, now you have had a very illustrious career with TPB, TCB Bank.
Yes.
Now you've left TCB Bank.
Yes.
You joined DCB Bank.
Yes.
It's relatively small.
Yes.
As a bank.
Yes.
It has been there for some years now,
correct,
but not as big.
Yes.
What made you go there? Because you've done a lot already.
Yes.
But you still have the energy to go push another small bank into a big bank?
A very, very interesting question. I didn't know you were going to ask that question and you would ask it that way. Actually, when I joined TCB, my plan was after 5 years, I think I said it, after 5 years, I'll leave the organization, go and join other private organizations. And actually, the opportunities were there. I don't want to mention the opportunities, but there are 2 major banks that gave me the opportunity. to become their CEOs. But then I realized how difficult it is to resign and leave the government job. I tried and it didn't work twice. Then I said, okay, let me give myself now time to focus on this organization that I am managing. And last year, because of a regulation which was put by the regulator, Bank of Tanzania, that a CEO of a bank after 10 years, they have to quit their jobs. In fact, when that rule came, I had already served my 10 years. Then they provide a moratorium of 2 years for those who have already served for 10 years. Then those 2 years came to an end in October last year, and I had to leave the bank. I was still 53 years of age, so I'm not that much an old man.
Not yet.
50,
Not yet at all.
Not yet at all. And I actually believe in working even past 60 years, even if it's not self-employment, I would do something else, because I believe you don't need to go and sleep, especially if your body and your mind is still sharp. So I had to leave the TCB. So there are so many options available. Option one, because I was part of the government, I could still stick into the government and find something within the government per se, either in the ministries or whatever. But I really wanted it to remain as a banker. And the opportunity which presented itself was the DCB Commercial Bank as a CEO. And let me tell you something. When we started transforming TCB Bank in the early 2012s and the like, the balance sheets of the two banks, TBB and DCB, wasn't actually that.
Those days?
Yes, those days. Because I remember at that time, the balance sheets of TCB was around 100 plus. DCB was around 70 billion plus. So fairly closer. And actually at that time, DCB was more profitable than TCB. They were paying a dividend, and we were not paying any dividend. So I believe 12 years later, the balance sheet is 1.4. The balance sheet of DCB now is around 230 billion. So a fairly small bank, 9 branches within Tanzania, 8 in Dar es Salaam, 1 in Dodoma. Surely, after doing a lot of work in TCB, people wouldn't have thought I would still be having energy to go and join another small organization. But that was indeed an available opportunity. And for me, I'm a transformative person. So if I had gone to a well-established bank, probably
just sit around
and So I have joined that organization in the month of November. And the organization isn't doing well, it's still small, but I'm committed rewriting the history of that organization already. We have already assembled a team. I think there are still some two or three more senior officers to join, and then take the bank into the next level. So my message to DCB stakeholders, employees, we are all committed moving this organization forward. I need their commitment and support to execute the strategy and the vision that we have already established. Secondly, for shareholders, we need their support, and within time, shortest possible time, we'll start be paying dividends, and the organization will be different. And for the public, come and join us. And for those who have not bought the shares, I think you can consider buying the shares of DCB, because I'm sure with the time after the transformation, this organization will be one of the organizations to see. We are committed.
Where do you see it in, let's say, 10 years? If you were to stay there for 10 years, where do you think you would be?
It will be a fairly, very, very big organization, a performing organization, profitable organization, an organization to go and say, yeah, this was once a small organization. And I'm really looking forward, giving myself at least maybe 5 to even 10 years if possible, to rewrite the history of that organization again and make it one of the leading banks in the chosen markets that we are in. So I'm optimistic, and I'm looking forward to transforming that organization again.
Mr. Moshingi, thank you so much for coming to our show. It has been a pleasure hosting you, and I wish you all the best.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. And I hope what I have shared will be of some significant contribution to your audience.